Hello everyone, I'm Ali Sadat. I'm a product lover because product can make value for your customer and users. In this video, I want to talk about Tailwind version 4. Let's go to the screen. Let's get started. In this blog, Tailwind CSS talk about version 4 of Tailwind CSS framework, and we want to read theme. No, we should go to the document of this one. Version 4 beta documentation preview the next Tailwind CSS. Tailwind CSS version 4 beta preview what's coming in the next version of Tailwind CSS. After a long alpha period, we're pumped to finally promote Tailwind CSS version 4 to beta. There are definitely some raw edge that things we want to improve, but we're confident that we're not going to make any more breaking changes between now and the spell release. This documentation is a work in progress and will continue to improve it over the course of the beta period, but it should be enough to get you up and running. If you run into any snags, let us know on GitHub so we can bulletproof this thing for the stable release a couple months down the road. Getting started. Installing with White. If you're using White or White Pro framework like Swell Kit and Remix, install Tailwind along with our new dedicated White plugin. You can add Tailwind CSS version 4 by White, and you can install by post CSS. npm install Tailwind CSS @next Tailwind CSS / post CSS @next. If you are using the older version of Tailwind CSS, you can upgrade your project by this command: npx Tailwind CSS upgrade @next. What's new in the version 4 of Tailwind CSS? CSS-First Configuration. One of the biggest changes in Tailwind CSS version 4 is the shift from configuring your project in JavaScript to configuring it in CSS. Instead of tailwind.config.js file, you can configure all your customization directly in the CSS file where you import Tailwind, giving you one less file to worry about your project. For example, app.css is a configuration file of Tailwind CSS. @import Tailwind CSS @temp bracket font display breakdown, and you can define your hex colors in CSS in this version, RGB color, it changed RGB color to OKLCH mode color with a wide variable colors code. You can access a lot of colors code by OKLCH. It makes easy to reuse these values as inline styles or pass them to libraries like motion.dev. You can read about motion in the dev website, motion.dev. Automatic source detection. You know how you always had to configure that any content array in Tailwind CSS version 3. In version 4, we came up with a bunch of histories for detecting all of that stuff automatically, so you don't have to configure it at all. For example, we automatically ignore anything in your .gitignore file to avoid scanning dependencies or generated files that aren't under version control. We also automatically ignore all binary extensions like image, videos, .zip files, and more. And if you ever need to explicitly add a source that's included by default, you can always add it with the @source directive right in your CSS file. Built in import support. Before version 4, if you wanted to inline other CSS file using @import, you'd have to configure another plugin like PostCSS import to handle it for you. Now we handle this out of the box. So you don't need any other tools or import system to purpose built for Tailwind CSS. So we've also been able to make it even faster by tightly integrating it with our engine. Built-in CSS transpilation. When building for production, Tailwind CSS version 4 runs your CSS through Lighting CSS automatically, which handles things like venture, prefixes, modern features, feature transpilation, minification, and more. This means you can remove tools like Autofixer and PostCSS present and from your project as well. In version 4, Tailwind CSS is the only thing you need to set up to handle your entire CSS pipeline. No other tooling required. Simplified theme configuration. In version 4, we've really simplified down the amount of theme configuration you need to do, especially for things that aren't really design tokens. Utilities like grid columns 12, Z30, and opacity 70 are no longer based on the theme. They just work whether you need a 5-column grid or a 73-column grid. You don't need to configure anything to make it happen. we've applied, and this generates automatically by Tailwind CSS. No, you should write manually, and this setting for grid columns. We've applied the same simplification to variants like data star as well. You don't need to configure this at all anything or use arbitrary values for simple Boolean attributes. For instance, write in this code, you can write data dash selected opacity 100. These changes mean you touch your theme configuration way less frequently, and it stays focused on the design tokens that matter, like your typography, color palette, and breakpoints. Dynamic spacing scale. We've simplified the way spacing utilized like px star, mtx star, w star, h star, and more work by deriving them all from a single spacing scale value defined as 0.25 rem in the default theme. You can define by this code. When you define your spacing scale this way, every multiple of 0.25 rem is available in your spacing scale. This means utilized like MT21 will work with no extra configuration, unlike in version 3 where you had to choose between MT20 and MT24 or drop down to using an arbitrary value. Arbitrary value? What's meaning? Oh,
arbitrary.
Arbitrary. I don't know about the accent arbitrary word. Excuse me about it. And if you want more constraints, you can always disable the dash spacing variable and provide your own explicit scale. Modernize P3 color palette. We've upgraded the entire default color palette from RGB to OKLCH, taking advantage of the wider gamut to make the colors more vivid in places where we were previously limited by the sRGB color space. We've tried to keep the balance between all colors the same as it was in version 3, so even though we've refreshed things across the board, it shouldn't feel like a breaking change when upgrading your exciting project. Simplified variable colors. If you were using CSS variables, your color palette in version 3, you might reminder having to do wired things like define your colors as just a list of numbers without including the RGB function, or having to use alpha value placeholder so that opacity modifiers would work. Thanks to the new CSS color mix function, none of that is necessary in version 4. You just define your colors as variables and all of the opacity modifier features work automatically. Oh, That's very good. App.css. Now, when you go to use a utility like bg primary 30, it just works. No cryptic workarounds necessary. Oh, it's meaning. That's good. That's very simple for a developer. Container query support. We brought container query support into core for version 4, so you don't need the Tailwind CSS / container queries plugin anymore. What's meaning? Add sign container. You added support to MX container query using new add sign MX variant. Like a regular breakpoint variable, you can also stack add sign min star and max add sign max star variants define counter query ranges. Browser support for container query is really great now, and I'm excited to make it even easier to start using them in your projects in version 4. 3D transforms. We finally added API for doing 3D transforms like rotate X star, rotate Y star, scale Z star, translate Z star, and tons more. Rotate X41, shadow. That's really good. Using transform 3D. I suggest you to read this page and you can introduce the version 4 of Tailwind CSS framework. Tailwind CSS is the best framework for CSS class in your HTML coding. And you can write your class, you can style your object in your page by class in HTML coding. And you don't need to open .css files and change them. Version 4, the upgraded version of Tailwind CSS. I write the links in the comments and you can open this page and read about it. And you can read the other pages like components, templates, screencast, playground, resources, and community. The documentation, the other version of Tailwind CSS is here, and you can read about all pages, all features in Tailwind CSS. For example, you can add font family. You can style font family in your page by these classes. For example, font size is very simple way the add font your page. Version outline to outline hidden. Default rings with rechange. default border color change. And you can use Tailwind CSS version 4 in your dynamic pages like React coding, React.js coding, Angular coding, or other frameworks of JavaScript, front-end JavaScript frameworks. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully it's useful for you. Thank you for in the next time.